We are Cop Connect, a group of lifelong Reds with one vision: to connect Liverpool fans everywhere through a spirit of friendship and togetherness, to build the world's most diverse, most inclusive Liverpool fan group. Join our growing community on our Cop Connect Facebook group, on Twitter and Instagram, and our website copconnect.com. Cop Connect, the ultimate Liverpool fan experience, brought to you by Liverpool fans, for Liverpool fans. Copconnect.com.
Hello and welcome to the Liverpool Connection podcast. I'm Daz. I've got Steve with me, and today's special guest, all the way from Liverpool, is Paul Salty Salt, and I'll ask you about that in a minute, from BBC Radio Merseyside. Hiya, Paul.
How's it going, lads? All right, yeah?
Good.
Yeah.
So you have to already explain the nickname then. Obviously, your last name's Salt.
Yeah, and that's pretty much it, really.
That's boring.
No, the nickname really, I mean, I was called it at school a little bit, but the nickname really took off when I started on Radio City, which is the independent radio station in Liverpool, which I worked with late 1990s and early noughties as well. I was on the breakfast show there, and the presenter started calling me Salty, and it kind of stuck from there, really, and I get called it all the time now. So there's worse nicknames to have, I suppose.
Yeah. Yes, I know Steve and myself have probably been called worse. So, so that's
on a daily basis.
Bad. Yeah, exactly. Especially people on the internet. So let's get into this, Paul. When did your love affair with Liverpool start, and when was your first Anfield experience?
Well, my love affair with Liverpool started in the early 1980s, so very much the glory years. I mean, absolutely spoiled rotten, really, with the football we used to watch back in those days. My dad is a Liverpool fan, so it was kind of natural progression that I'd become one as well. But in the 1980s, I was actually living in Staffordshire. So even though it's only an hour away on the train to Liverpool, in the 80s, I went to away games down in the Midlands as opposed to going to Anfield. So my first game was an away game in 1984. And it was the treble winning season when we won the league, the European Cup and the Milk Cup, as it was known there. And believe it or not, in such a glorious season, we lost 2-0 to Stoke. So that was my first ever game. And it was the team of, I was just absolutely in my element. It was the team of Rush, Dalglish, Souness, Hansen, Grobbelaar, an absolutely fantastic team who a few weeks after losing to Stoke went and beat Roma in their own backyard to win the European Cup. So they weren't a bad side. So throughout the 80s, I went to a few games, but they were away games. So I saw, the great side of Barnes, Beardsley, Aldridge of 87, 88, which is still my favourite Liverpool team, even despite all that Klopp's players have done. And then my first Anfield game was 1990. So Kenny was manager. October 1990. So Liverpool had just been crowned league champions for the last time until this year. And we went along, me, my dad and my brother, and saw a 2-0 win over Chelsea, which was nice.
So, as you said, what's your comparison? Because this squad is absolutely amazing, and I'm a 70s kid as well, so I saw the 80s, the Rushes and the Barneses, and the old school in me is still saying that was like the best team. And what's your thoughts? Because I mean, like, this team is amazing.
I'm probably pretty similar to you, really, in that I think whenever you look at players or teams from your childhood, you do look back with just a fondness anyway, because of it was when you were growing up, and obviously you idolise players when you're growing up. Whereas when you get into your 40s, like I am, I don't know how old you are. I wouldn't like to guess.
50.
You're 50?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. I just turned 50 in August. Yeah.
Oh wow! Right. So you're older. Well, I'm 44, so
A baby you are.
But when my favourite Liverpool team, as I said, is the 87-88 team. And you look back on that team with the rose-tinted glasses because, I was 11, 12 at that time and idolised every single player. Whereas when you look at this team now, I'm an adult, so I'm looking at them differently. And I wouldn't say I've not got affection for them, but, I get a bit misty-eyed when I talk about the 1980s. So it is really hard to compare. But I think, that team, the team of Barnes, Beardsley and Aldridge and then Rush, just played the most scintillating, fantastic football. I mean, I was talking about the first game I went to at Anfield 1990. And John Barnes, anyone who's a bit younger than us, just watch the videos of John Barnes. And he was just, for about 3 or 4 years, he was the best player in Europe. He really was, in terms of what he did, the amount of goals he obviously laid on, the amount of spectacular goals he scored himself. So I think it is really hard to compare. But when you look at what the team did last season, the Klopp team, they've got to be right up there in terms of both sides. All out attack, the amount of goals and the quality of the goals and the quality of the play. I think there are definitely similarities between the two.
Yeah, because obviously growing up, we had the footy cards and the posters and everything. It'd be a bit weird how old we are now if we had Virgil's poster in our bedrooms. I'd have to think about that one.
yeah, it would be a bit weird. Although I do, my lad's 9. And I do encourage him to, get all the footy cards. And I mean, it's not the same for them, though. I mean, you'll remember if you growing up over here in the 1980s, Panini stickers. Mm-hmm. Panini stickers were the thing. And I managed to fill Football 86. It nearly killed me doing it. But it was so hard. Certain players were just impossible to get, But there was an innocence about that time. I wouldn't swap that for the world. I wouldn't swap it for... football now is great, but every game being on the telly and, social media, I sometimes do wonder whether actually we're better for it. I'm not sure we are. Just, listening to the radio and getting the results if you weren't at the match was ace. It was, you were hanging off every word of the commentary and that kind of thing as well,
Well, it's like our good friend Jeff Golding, he was one... We'll get into a little bit later as well, the pay-per-view thing. He's like, I'm not going to pay that, and he listened to it on the radio, and he was like, he hasn't listened to the radio games in a while. So I'm the same. My granddad would always listen. If we couldn't go to the match, we'd listen to it on the radio. And there just seemed to be more descriptive about the game than if you listen to it on the telly. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you look at the game, going back to the 1980s, you look at some of the games, there was the old one that wasn't even filmed. Mm-hmm. In fact, I don't know whether, do you remember the Jan Molby amazing goal against Manchester United in the League Cup? I don't know if you remember, 85-86 season, and he scored from, nearly the halfway line. And there was actually a TV strike on at the time, television, some dispute over, I think it was the cameramen who were on strike. And it was described as the lost goal for donkey's years until Jan Molby himself actually found the tape of the goal in his loft. And it had been recorded, I think it was on a security camera, that they'd actually recorded the goal, and a whole new basically, if you hadn't been in the ground, no one knew exactly what the goal was like, and so a whole new generation of fans got to appreciate that goal, which was fantastic. But football wasn't on the telly very much. You had Match of the Day on a Saturday. Late 80s, you get a live game, one live game a week on a Sunday, and that was it. And gradually the Premier League was born in '92, and that's when we started seeing more and more games coming on to what we've got now, really.
That was really the genesis of my love of Liverpool. It was back in 96, 97 is when, it started being televised a little bit more here in the United States. And mostly it was Liverpool or Manchester United on the telly every week. So, I just gravitated towards Liverpool, and thank God I did. But, but like you said, before that, it was and even today in Liverpool, it's hard to access some of the away games, and we kind of talk about technology, but it's nice to be able to, if you can't go to the away game, that you're able to stream it later, on online, and maybe, see the highlights on YouTube and things like that. And I wanted to say, because, this team now is so interesting, because one of the great byproducts of the success of the current team is that it's making people go back to the late 80s and looking at all the archival footage and looking at the history of those teams that were so successful, because, obviously Klopp is being compared to Shankly. This team is being compared to the 80s teams like you've done previously, so you're kind of getting a whole new generation of people going back and looking at the history, which is amazing. It just strengthens everybody's love affair for the team.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Liverpool's history is such a rich history, isn't it? I mean, you could get like, I'm kind of envious of people who don't know a lot about the history, because they're exploring it for the first time, and that must be amazing. And I mean, I'm an 80s kid, so I kind of learned a lot about the 70s, which were a bit before my time, and then before that, you look at Shankly coming in, the club being in the second division, and it is a real, it's a fairy tale story, and it's fantastic when you look at all the players that have come through. And you're right, there are parallels. But when Shankly resigned, I think a lot of people were worried about what would happen to the team. How the team would progress without him. We all know Bob Paisley came in and won even more. And then Joe Fagan came in, and it is the transition. The boot room is mythical, but it's true. Joe Fagan came in, won the treble, and that's when I really started watching Liverpool, when Joe Fagan was manager only as a kid, and then Kenny being the first player manager to win the double, and then I became a regular at Anfield in the early 1990s. That's when I started standing on the Kop and that kind of thing. So just a little bit before you were watching on the telly in 96, 97. So, and that's where it all went wrong.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah, blame me.
Well, no, I started going every home game. I mean, I'd been obviously on and off, with my dad or whatever, but started going on my own as a sort of teenager every home game from the 92-93 season, which Daz will probably remember wasn't really very good, because it was the Graham Souness years, and the club was in a massive transition. But just to go and experience standing on the Kop, no one can ever take that away from me. You can't do that now, and it was the most amazing experience. The kind of the smells of the Kop, which weren't always particularly pleasant, but I remember seeing the Kop for the first time and thinking, the swaying and in unison, and the sounds that came out of it. You can only tell your kids or your grandkids about that now, but it was amazing to see and amazing to hear as well.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I miss, having been in the Kop for a couple of games, is that I remember standing or sitting there. I'm standing in there, but just remembering, and I wonder how this would have been if it was just all standing, how close everybody would feel, just the noise of it all. And that's, hopefully gradually there'll be some standing again soon.
Again, Liverpool are looking to expand the Anfield Road end to take the capacity above 60,000, understandably, because the season ticket waiting list is ridiculous. But again, back in the early 1990s, we used to rock up the ground about, I don't know, midday, maybe, normally a 3:00 kickoff, and you just stand there, wait for the gates to open, pay your money over the turnstile, go in and get a good spec on the Kop. That seems so alien to the way football has gone now. It's just completely different when you look at people can't get tickets for love nor money. But back in the 90s, Anfield didn't always sell out. Mm-hmm. People forget it. It wasn't even in the 80s, which is obviously a time of hardship for a lot of people. The 1980s, particularly around here, some games didn't sell out. You could just turn up, pay your money, and you were going in. And I suppose that's how football's changed a heck of a lot, really, over the years.
Yeah. It's funny because in my Facebook memories today popped up a picture of me. So 5 years ago today was Klopp's first home game, against Southampton, and it was just reminded me of just the the history, and the transition of the team since Klopp has come. But, we love bringing journalists on because we like to, Daz and I, and he started this podcast, and we always like to have guests on that make a living, covering Liverpool Football Club and that are in Liverpool. So can you kind of tell us your journey of how you got to where you are? And is that always something that you wanted to do?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, as a kid growing up, I had two passions. One was Liverpool and the other was radio. Mm-hmm. And I realised pretty early on I was never going to play for Liverpool. So radio was the option, really. So I got a job when I was 17 at a commercial radio station, just working on a sports show there, just making the tea, editing reports, all that kind of stuff. Decided to do a degree. Did a degree in media studies, which took me to the age of 20, nearly 21, and then was coming to the end of my degree. And applied for a job at Radio City, which, as I said, is the commercial station in Liverpool, in the sports department, and was lucky enough to get it, which was amazing. So all of a sudden, a kid sort of fresh out of college, and I'm reading the sport bulletins on Liverpool's big commercial station. So it kind of progressed from there, really. I already had a season ticket at Anfield at that point, so I was going to games anyway, as well as doing all these bulletins on the radio, and all the kind of big finals over the years. I'd normally go as a reporter, interviewing the managers and the players after the game. So I've been lucky enough to go to the FA Cup final 2001, the Michael Owen final, the Alaves game, which nice. Is just, it actually annoys me that game is completely forgotten. It's like it never happened because of Istanbul. And it's one of the most amazing European finals in the history of the UEFA Cup, the Champions League, all the European competitions. So we went to Dortmund for that, which was a fantastic experience. And then, of course, the crowning glory was covering that night in Istanbul, which no one will ever forget. So it's been good. I mean, I've sort of graduated more into being a radio presenter now than reporting on games anymore. I presented the sports show at Radio Merseyside for about 7 years as well. So it's been brilliant. And when you're reporting or when you're talking about the club you love, as you'll know, you're doing a podcast. It just doesn't feel like work, does it? No.
Yeah, once it feels like work, I'll stop. I don't want to work. But going back to the Shankly days, the boot room as well. I wanted to talk. How we say Bob Paisley came along, then Fagan. Do you think it's going to be the same? The Klopp to the Pep.
It'll be. I mean, a lot of people are, I suppose, naturally saying that Gerrard will be the one that comes in and takes over at some point. But I still think that's really, really premature talk. When you look at, I don't think he's done a bad job at Rangers. Don't get me wrong. I think he's done okay. But Scottish football is not really much of a preparation for taking over at Liverpool anyway. And when I know Linders has had a brief go at it before, and then ended up coming back to Liverpool. But just hearing Linders speak, he just seems to get it. He just seems to get exactly what his job is, what the club's all about. I think the most important thing about being Liverpool manager is getting the club and getting the people of the city. If you do that, I think you're halfway there. Obviously, results on the pitch are going to dictate whether you're a success or not. But when you look back at Rafa, I look back at, and look back with such fondness of Benitez's time at Anfield. It was crazy days, crazy nights, particularly in Europe. But Benitez, right from the beginning, appeared to get what Liverpool was all about. He had a connection with the fans, and I think Klopp has got that. And hearing Pep Linders talk in interviews, he's not done that many of them, really, to be honest. but he appears to know how the club ticks. So he would be the natural successor. And of course, if you've got someone who is already ingrained in the ways of the club and the way the previous manager works, which is exactly what Paisley had. Paisley had worked under Shankly, seen how Shankly operated, probably taken bits of the way Shankly worked and then put his own stamp on it. I mean, there were two completely different characters. Shankly was, the kind of the great orator, raconteur, call him what you will. Paisley didn't mutter more than about 5 words. You couldn't get an interview out of Bob Paisley, but it worked. So I think Linders would appear to be the obvious successor, but whether there's nothing to say want it. I don't know. I hope it's not going to happen for a long, long time. Yeah.
Yeah. I just Gerard's not. Like we've talked before, me and Steve. That's more romantic to me. Would be Gerard, and then obviously you talk about assistant manager maybe being Carra, but I just don't see, because if it didn't work out, I think it would destroy Stevie.
Yeah, I think you're right on that score. I mean, I don't know whether Carragher would give up his Sky work anyway, to be honest, because he's on a good gig there. There's relatively little pressure. You can argue with Gary Neville every Monday night. Why would he want to give up on that? But yeah, it would be. I mean, the obvious reference point when you're talking about Gerrard being manager is Kenny, because Kenny, was and arguably still is the greatest player that the club has ever seen. Gerrard is on a par with him. Kenny came in as player manager with absolutely no managerial experience and won the double in the first season. But football's changed a lot since then. Also, Kenny, when he came in, had Bob Paisley as a kind of consultant for the first couple. That did make a big difference. I wouldn't want Gerrard to in any way tarnish his legacy. No, maybe it wouldn't. Maybe even if it didn't work out, it wouldn't. But he was such a fantastic player. It'd be a massive gamble to do it. I think
he should never have gone to LA Galaxy then.
Yeah, that's true. But I think
political American there. I'm not really.
Well, no, I mean, hey, we've slated that era because we actually went to Houston and watched them play, and we were like, okay, let's scrub that from our memory bank. We don't want to even think about that part of his career. But you think about like Graham Souness when he was the manager. I think for a lot of people that taints his legacy a little bit as a player because of the way he managed the team afterwards. And I think we're kind of scared that we don't want that to happen to Gerrard,
Yeah, I mean, the Souness one is, we could probably do an entire hour just talking about Souness and what happened there. I'm sure you're aware when he was manager about him selling his story to...
Yeah. I didn't want to say that part, but,
Yeah, we don't like to talk about around here, really. But I very much put... I kind of compartmentalize Souness the player with Souness the manager, and Souness the player was just the most phenomenal midfielder. I mean, if he was a midfielder in the Premier League now, he'd be worth in excess of £100 million. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And I think he acknowledges now that he made a lot of mistakes as manager, not just the mistake I've just referred to there, but he tried to change the club too quickly. Yeah. He got rid, or he moved on a lot of players that still had a bit to give, and tried to change things, perhaps, but not before they needed to. Some of his ideas, but it too quickly. And he did bring through a lot of good young players, and I think in some ways he was ahead of his time in terms of diet and that kind of thing. But it just didn't work out. He thought, and this is a parallel with Gerrard. He thought that what worked at Glasgow Rangers would work at Liverpool, but in north of the border in Scotland, there's Rangers and Celtic. For a brief time in the 80s, there was Aberdeen and Dundee United. But here there's obviously, you're talking about 6 or 7 clubs who are all competing, so it's completely. And I think Souness has actually said, I've read his book, he actually said, it was the right job at the wrong time. Because I came into Liverpool at a time where, it wasn't just going to be carry on where we've left off. There needed to be changes to be made because the team was reaching the end of its shelf life. Whereas anyone who comes in taking over from Klopp, you would hope, the club will still be in a very, very good. I think Klopp is the kind of guy that is constantly thinking ahead. So even if he's not going to be the manager, I think he wants to safeguard the future of the club because that's the kind of bloke he is. So hopefully you could just take over. That.
Yeah. Well, I just wish that Souness was on the squad after Pickford did what he did to Van Dijk. I would love to see what Souness, how he would have taken care of that.
Yeah. I mean, there's some legendary stories about Souness, the player, in terms of going in hard, shall we say, on certain challenges. The problem is he probably wouldn't. I don't know how long he'd last on the pitch in some games. Some challenges he put in and that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, he would still get in my all-time Liverpool team, Graham Souness. He was that good as a midfielder.
Yeah, I can't see Souness being on the pitch for more than 2 minutes. The way VAR is going and the refereeing is going. Might as well get on to that. We've already had a couple of insane. A bit of both, really, because it's Michael Oliver should have seen the Pickford incident and already red carded him. So, but then going up to VAR again, as we say, the two men in a van. I'm still trying to grasp how come they didn't go through the whole. They did 1 and 2. That they didn't go to the third one, which would be, looking at the tackle. And then, obviously yesterday, that was a joke as well. And I'm not sensing that there's the referee and VAR lads aren't getting their stories straight.
Yeah, it's the thing that is frustrating about VAR is that there is no, the explanations are muddied. So there is no I think if they came out, I mean, this is an old argument even before VAR when they were talking about referees. If referees came out and explained their decision, I think people would be a lot more, they'd be happier with it. They'd accept it a lot easier. But that's been made even worse now by the fact that you've got, we don't know the process really. We don't really understand how they're coming to the conclusions they're coming to. I mean, the Pickford one, which I think I try not to get angry about football anymore because I'm a man in my 40s. When I was a kid, I used to cry, but now, but last Saturday, I was absolutely fuming because it was just ludicrous. And for them to say that with the Van Dijk injury, they are just checking for the offside. They didn't check for the challenge. Well, do they not know the rules of football? That once a game has stopped, you can still get sent off. It's a fact. If you and I were playing football and we were on opposing sides and we walked off at the final whistle and I punched you in the face, the referee can still send me off. Yeah. That's a basic part of football, and it was almost like they didn't know the rules, which is ludicrous. But if they then came out after and explained the decision-making process, I think that, again, like yesterday's with the penalty, explain it to us, because as it is, we had rumours going round that he hadn't checked the tackle. He'd only checked whether it was inside or outside the box. And then later on Match of the Day over here, they then said, oh, no, they did check the tackle as well. Well, which is it? You're making it up as you go along, lads. We can't keep up with this. And that's the big problem I have with it. They are making it up as they go along.
Yeah,
Paul, go ahead, Daz. Sorry.
I didn't even know about, the penalty decision yesterday, whether your foot's on the line. I've never heard of that before.
So if your foot's on the line, the line belongs to the penalty area, the same as the byline belongs to the pitch. So unless a ball if a ball goes completely over the line, it's out. otherwise it's in. So if you have 1 foot on the line of the penalty area and you're fouled, it's a penalty because you are technically in the box. I mean, looking at it, I've watched it about 10 times. It's marginal, isn't it? It's marginal whether his foot is on the line. But then again, you're then getting into was it a foul in the first place?
Yeah. So that's my main objective, Paul, to this, the way that England is trying to implement the VAR system, because a penalty is such a huge decision, right? So wouldn't you, as the referee in charge of the game, wouldn't you want to be involved in that decision? So it doesn't take that long to go look at the screen and say, that wasn't a foul, or we're looking at offsides, but then I'm looking at the replays like, oh, I don't think that was a foul. But he should be the final decision maker. And for them to make decisions up at the, 2 hours away, wherever the 2 men in a van, like Daz said, to make the decision that affects the game on the pitch, and then you as a ref not being involved in that decision, that to me is ludicrous, right? Because you have the whistle. You should have control of that game. And if they're right, then they're right. But at least I think that would alleviate a lot of the controversy that we all have about the system if they actually put eyes on the play, right?
Yeah. Well, I agree. When VAR came in, do you remember they never, ever, ever went to check the monitor?
No.
Ever.
No.
So that was all down to whoever was in Stockley Park, which is where it is, to say, hang on, you've made a mess of this here. You need to overturn your decision, whether it be a penalty or whatever it was. Then there was that many mistakes being made that then all of a sudden the referees did then go to the monitor to check for themselves. Now, I think I see more logic in doing it that way, because the referee on the pitch is still taking responsibility for the decision that he's making, as opposed to almost it being I'm not taking any ownership of this now. You can decide down in your van down south. So I get it from that point of view. But now we appear to have gone back to them not using the monitors again, because yesterday's game was a prime example of, I tell you what, just go and have a quick look at the monitor, and then you can decide, A, whether that was in the box or not, and B, whether it was a foul. Now, for them not to be in his ear saying that, they mustn't. I still don't know whether they did look at whether it was a foul or not. I'm not sure.
I don't think they did, because on offsides and that play, whether his foot was on the line, you really can't argue, because it's that technology, right? But it's the other things where your opinion matters, and I think being at the pitch, it's supposed to be a clear and obvious error.
Yeah.
Right. And they don't, without going to the pitch side monitor, you're never going to know. You're just taking somebody else's word. And last year they had, because you're right, the first year they didn't even have the option to look at it on the sideline. Last year they had the option, and very minimal. I think maybe less than 3 times did any ref in the whole season go to the pitch side to look. And which is a travesty, because you have the opportunity to take your time. Everybody wants it right. And you guys both know that there were many decisions even last year that if the referee on the pitch would have gone and taken a look, it would have been reversed. And I don't know why it's just egotistical, or they don't want to, make their friends back at the van look bad. I just don't understand what it is.
No, I mean, you mentioned there about, I think the problem, the VAR, the concept of VAR is to eradicate errors.
Right.
Taking the example last week of the derby, now the offside, you say that it's open and shut. That's just a matter of fact. Well, I've watched that. I still can't see how he's offside. Not clearly offside to me.
Right.
Be a goal. So even without VAR last week, we would have won the derby 3-2, and that would have been I know I would say this, wouldn't I? That would have been a fairer result than what we got with VAR. That's my problem with VAR. It's not making things better. It's actually making things worse. And the offside situation where you've got toenails and armpits offside and all that kind of nonsense, that's not That's not what football's all about. You can't celebrate a goal anymore because you sort of. I mean, the Salah one last night, the brilliant goal, and correctly ruled out. But I kind of leapt up and then went,
when Jota scored, I waited to make sure it wasn't a VAR coming, right?
and someone, when you go the match. Obviously, I've not been the match for a while, but when you go the match, it's even worse because you're in a ground and there's a load of you're all together and you kind of, we used to pile on all the time if anyone's scored. That's been a bit, but we're now all standing there going, in a minute, we'll do it in a minute. That's not what football's all about, is it? Football's about spontaneity, about the joy of the moment, not the joy of waiting 2 minutes before finding out whether it's a goal. And I know this is alien to a lot of American listeners, but I watch a lot of cricket, and what I love about cricket is that they have the decision review system, DRS it's called, and that is more matters of fact. That is more whether someone's caught it or whether it's leg before wicket or whatever. But what I love about it is you can hear the third umpire in the stand talking to the umpire. The same with rugby. You hear the communication going on between the referee or the umpire on the pitch and whoever's in the stand or wherever they may be, reviewing every decision. Would it not help us as TV viewers to hear the conversation between Stockley Park and the referee on the pitch? At least then, we would have got more of an appreciation of what was going on, wouldn't we?
Of course.
Yeah, well, it would, but, that they don't want us to hear what they're talking about, because obviously, like I said, they're not on the same page. I just don't understand. I do wish they would mic up the ref and the lads in the van because, it's frustrating because you even saw Jota look into the sideline like, can I celebrate? Is it a goal? And when that happens, when the player's not celebrating, if the fans were in the stadium, the fans are just, like you said, Paul, just be looking around at each other like, do we jump up now or do we wait? What's going on? Then you look like a right tit when you jump up. I look a right tit when I jumped up in front of me kids. Me kids looked at me like, what are you doing? It's not a goal, Dad. It's not a goal. No, it's just, we live in like weird times.
The other thing as well is, can you hear me?
Yeah.
The other problem as well is in the ground, it's so badly communicated because Anfield hasn't got a big screen. So it even worse is when you're looking around going, it's not even, you're not even being told what's going on. So everyone's standing there. It's just the whole thing. I understand the concept behind it, but the problem is it's being operated by fools. And that's the main issue with it. And I'd still love for it to be scrapped. It's not going to be, obviously, but I'd love for it to be.
But I think also, like the VAR people, I don't think they've ever played football in their lives.
No.
And I think that I like what Cara said. Get the ex-referees in there. And I
just get some ex-players in there. Why do they have to be referees? Just get ex-players. Have a panel of ex-players that are, that have played the game and they know what's a foul and what's not a foul, right?
Not Evertonians, though.
Yeah, well,
I think that's
they'd win every match.
The issue with the ex-players is they're going to.
They all have allegiances, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't an ex-player in the country that wouldn't have and you could say, well, they don't, officiate those games involving any club they've played for. But then you'll have accusations of, but you made this decision because you're affecting how that affected your club in the table and all that kind of thing. So it's not ideal. It just needs to be. I think it needs to be clear. The offside situation definitely needs sorting out because, goals are being disallowed that shouldn't be. Last week, Henderson, but more than that, way more than that.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, we could talk about this and, there's no easy solution because it seems like the rest of the world can implement this technology, but England has had a problem, ever since it's been entered into the Premier League. And they need to work on it because it shouldn't be that controversial every week in, week out. I mean, even the call with the Manchester United Maguire against Azpilicueta, You know, we've seen Dejan Lovren be called for penalties not even half as worse as that one was. So anyway, yeah, it's frustrating, right? So
anyway, massive.
Yeah.
Massive.
Can you kind of give me your thoughts of the project big picture that's obviously not going through, but also the proposed, you know, the Super League for the Champions League. So can you kind of maybe give us what you've been hearing or what your perspective was on both of those situations?
Well, yeah, they came very close together, didn't they? I think the project big picture, start with that one. I think, you know, Liverpool and Manchester United were allegedly the kind of authors of that. Liverpool, it appears, more than Manchester United. You read those proposals and you go, oh, come on, whoa, well, this is going a bit far. You know, what are you on about here? But then you look at it and you think, I think they knew when they put in those proposals that they get rejected. Mm-hmm. I think what they're trying to do is get a middle ground between what we've got at the moment and those proposals. There's no doubt about it that the big clubs want more of a share of the pie. So I think famously John W. Henry, when he took over at Anfield, was aghast that Huddersfield got the same share of TV rights money as Liverpool did. And, you know, because I think the argument was, who in America is watching Huddersfield? So you can kind of see the point, but they've got to be careful that they don't ruin the product, as they say, by making it more like, you know, people don't watch Bundesliga as much anymore because Bayern Munich win it every year. You don't want English football to be in a situation where it's not competitive. You want the little man to beat the big man now and again. Probably not 7-2 at Villa Park, but you want that kind of competitiveness. So it's interesting that Rick Parry was involved in it as well, who's obviously former Liverpool exec and involved in charge of the Football League now. But I think that was a sort of calculated proposal to say, look, we need some kind of change. This is outrageous and will not go through, but we need you to meet us halfway. I mean, I can't see anyone voting for I can't see most of the members voting for the club to go down to 18 teams, for example, the league to go down to 18 teams, because you're not going to get the small clubs voting for that. And as it is at the moment, the voting structure needs 14 clubs to vote for anything. So I think there will be some reform, but hopefully not so outlandish that all the power is with the big clubs. Because, you know, even as a Liverpool fan, I don't think that's right. And it's almost like it was a sweetener for the Football League clubs, wasn't it? We'll give you all this in return for us having all the power. That's not great for English football at all, I don't think.
But, you know, that, like you alluded to, you know, John W. Henry, when he bought the club and he looked at the finances in the Premier League, he saw the inequities. And he's been working on this ever since for the last 10 years. This was like the 18th version of this proposal, right? That supposedly wasn't supposed to be public. But do you think it could have also been a ploy to get the government to get off their ass to help? You know, they've been talking about helping, but they haven't really done anything to help these smaller clubs, you know, stay in existence.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite passionate about sort of lower league football in this country as well, and non-league football. You know, you go right the way around this area. We've obviously got Liverpool and Everton. We've got Tranmere, who are now in League Two. I would hate for anything to happen to Tranmere. Further down, I'm about a 5-minute walk away from a club called Marine. Marine can still have fans in. They're limited, I think, to 600 fans. But if anything happened to them, this is a club that are delivering food parcels to people in the Crosby community where I live. So anything happens to those kind of clubs, you're ripping out the heart of the community. We've seen it with Bury recently. You know, you can't afford to lose these clubs. So I absolutely agree. The government does need to do more. And, you know, you've been given the comparison with the big clubs helping the small clubs. Well, if you wouldn't get a big supermarket like a Tesco or a Sainsbury's helping the corner shop. No. But football's different. Football, you know, less so now, but back in the day, these small clubs were the ones that were producing the players. That Ian Rush is my favourite player of all time. He came from Chester, just down the road. Where would Ian Rush have been without Chester? Even modern day, Jimmy Vardy starting in non-league. So you've got to be so careful. You kill these clubs off, and you're killing off a major part of English football. And what makes us is unique is that we've got this pyramid, and this pyramid is the envy of the world. Really, There doesn't really anyone who's got a pyramid like we've got. And if you kill that off, you're killing off English football.
But I think playing devil's advocate, that Project Big Picture was really trying to strengthen and bring in all four levels of the pyramid together, under one jurisdiction and helping those lower clubs. But, I understand one club, one vote and everything. So, but it'll be interesting to see how it, is formalized going forward, because I don't think we've heard the last of it, and then segueing into the Champions League teams, trying to form this other competition.
I don't know how. I don't know how that would even get off the ground. I really don't. And do you know what? Would you be bothered? Maybe you would. Would you be bothered with football anymore if Liverpool left the Premier League and were in the European Super League? The great thing about watching Liverpool in Europe is that each occasion is a unique occasion. The Barcelona game a couple of years back, that wouldn't have been the same if it was a European Super League game, would it? The whole point is Liverpool can go 10 years longer without playing Barcelona, without playing Real Madrid. Then they come out the hat in the Champions League. And that's what makes it amazing, because it doesn't happen all the time. If you start saying they're playing each other twice a year, there was talk of playoffs, wasn't there, as well? Whatever. You do that, you're killing what is unique about European football. Is it's knockout, and it's you can get any.
Well, I mean, that's one of the allure of watching picking the balls out of the thing, right? To see who you get to play and thinking of all these other matchups that you can. Oh man, we get to play this team. We haven't played them since 2007, and so that you really lose a lot of that romanticism about the whole competition, I think. Yeah,
look at the Ajax game last week. Liverpool haven't played Ajax since the 1960s, I think it was. So the fact, Ajax are a great club with great European pedigree. Liverpool against Ajax, in the European Cup, as I still call it, is amazing. Yeah. Liverpool, whether Ajax even get in, but Liverpool against Ajax in the European Super League, it's not for me. And I just think the problem is that most of the countries in Europe haven't got a league like we've got. So, right. Italy, Juve run away with it. Germany, Bayern run away with it. Even Spain, it's Real Madrid, Barcelona. They haven't got that unique sort of competitiveness that we've got, and they don't have as much money as the Premier League makes. The Premier League, I think a lot of clubs have got to be careful what they wish for, really.
Yeah, it's like you don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But like you say, I mean, I could imagine, if fans were allowed to go to that Ajax match, how just spending the day in Holland and all that. It's just that's why I'm hoping when fans do come back that fans have a bit more say in everything. Because football without fans is a bit crap. I mean, it is. It's somewhat sometimes like you're watching a training match.
Yeah, you were saying to me, I can't remember what was on air and what was off air now, but I think you were saying off air that you just watch Liverpool games now, and I kind of get that now, because a lot of these games. I mean, I had the Wolves Newcastle game on before we started. It was dreadful. It was absolutely awful. I mean, even with that fake crowd noise, which actually does me head in, it was like watching a glorified training session, and it just makes you realise how important the fans are to football, particularly when you look at what's been happening with the results as well. Have you noticed how many more away wins there are now? Because the team hasn't got the home fans behind them, putting pressure on the referee, and also making their players perform better. And I'm sure Liverpool have had to deal with that. I mean, Liverpool have actually done all right at home so far this season, but it still must be quite hard for those players to adjust to. and also score a goal and then hear Blur's Song 2 blaring over the PA. Does me head in as well.
Yeah, I mentioned that in a previous podcast because we're behind Chelsea's 88 game unbeaten streak at home, and I said, man, if we go through this season not losing at home with this type of situation, what an achievement that would be, because we get so much a kick in the ass from the fans there at Anfield. It's like, man, if we don't get a loss at home, it'd be amazing this season, because you see the results all across the league.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at the City result the other week against Leicester. That was at the Etihad, wasn't it? And you look at that and go, I mean, the whole thing is just, I suppose in a way, what makes it quite enjoyable is that it's so off its head. Yeah. And these results are just all over the place at the moment. So there's that excitement, but it also makes you realise that this is going to be like no other season we've ever experienced, I think. I mean, Everton have been up there, for God's sake.
Yeah. Well, United's already dropped 8 points. That's more points than we've dropped at home in 3 years. So that just kind of puts it in perspective.
Yeah, but remember, Steve, they're back. They're back. Ole says they're back.
Driving it.
Woo! Off the cliff.
That was another dreadful game yesterday. Talking about training sessions, that United-Chelsea game.
Yeah.
Absolutely dire. And they've been billed as, clash of the titans, two massive clubs going head to head. It was just woeful.
Yeah, we're just living in a different time. I mean, up until Christmas, we're going to play matches every 3-4 days. That's mad. That's mad.
And I think it's taken its toll a bit already. I mean, watching that game yesterday, I certainly thought that Liverpool, we looked a little bit leggy at times. And you got to factor in that we played Ajax just a few days before, whereas Sheffield United had a free week. And it's going to, another game midweek, another game next weekend. It's kind of, if you're in Europe, it's hard anyway in a normal season. Take away the fact that, we are cramming games in, and it's going to take its toll. He's going to have to rotate a fair bit, I think.
Yeah, I would think on Tuesday, you're going to see the likes of Jones, Williams, the other Reece Williams as well coming on, because we have a small squad anyway. I just don't see Klopp Minamino will probably start, which is good, and Shaqiri. So, I mean, that's good for them. They'll get games because we're out of the League Cup, obviously. But yeah, it's just going to be crazy because, you brought up that City result with Leicester, and then the week later, Leicester got beat 3-0.
Yeah.
It's just madness. Yeah, but, and I'm happy that Everton lost today. Southampton looked good as well. But it's these teams that you wouldn't necessarily think are going to do, like Villa. They were a point from relegation last season, and they've got a good run, but that's come to an end. It's madness.
I still think Villa will be all right this season. Famous sort of last words, and there's a long way to go, but they look like they've done well in the transfer market. I know on Friday they weren't great, but from what I've seen of them, they look a decent side. Leeds were. I know they lost to Wolves, but they look like they're going to be there or there. But I think they'll be comfortably mid-table. And you're right about Southampton. They played Everton off the park today. Again, what I saw, Danny Ings. Still have a little bit of a tinge of regret whenever I see Danny, because he is just such a solid player. Yeah. And if we could have kept him as a squad player, he wouldn't have half Andy. I really do believe that. It's such a shame that we couldn't keep him. Yeah,
definitely. Hey, Paul, as we're getting towards the back end of our session today, I have some questions that are coming in live from some of our listeners and viewers. So ready for a couple of questions? Okay, I'll start off serious. The serious one is from our buddy Lane Star. Considering his outstanding scoring and assist records, Salah tends to divide fans for how good he is. Do you see him in your top 5 greatest attacking players ever for Liverpool?
Top 5 greatest attacking players. whether he's in the top 5 at the moment, he wouldn't be far off it. I mean, I don't. But by the way, I'll make it quite clear. He doesn't divide opinion with me at all. I think he's absolutely brilliant. And do you know what? He was getting stick again yesterday, you know, for the one where he hit the post. He is a goal scorer. Okay, he's not an out-and-out centre forward. I'm kind of, you know, the generation of Ian Rush and John Aldridge. Right. You're not telling me that Ian Rush and John Aldridge weren't selfish. They just wanted to score goals. And he can be a bit selfish, but I guarantee he gets more goals as a result of being selfish than being unselfish. I've got no problem with Salah. So anyone who's got a problem with Mohamed Salah needs to give their head a wobble, because I just don't know.
Yeah. They've got a problem with Paul.
Well, I mean, you know, Salah, he's not a poacher, right, in the traditional sense of a striker getting into positions. And so he has to work for his goals. He's not getting anything easy either, right?
No, he's not a poacher, but then Liverpool don't play like they a poacher in the team. That's the whole point. And that's why I don't think he was as bothered about Brewster going, because Brewster is going to be a poacher more than anything else. Exactly. Liverpool don't. Firmino is more withdrawn than the 2 players coming in either side of him. So that's why you don't really need a sort of 6-yard box sniffer, as we used to say, or a poacher. But Salah's amazing for me. Yeah. Amazing.
Have you ever thought about writing a book? I think maybe that's probably more likely.
Well, people have sometimes people have said, "Oh, you could write a book about, you know, following Liverpool all these years and that kind of thing." So it's kind of crossed my mind, but there's a lot of good books about Liverpool out there, and I'd be a bit worried that I'd write it and no one would buy it, because there's so. I mean, I know you had Jeff on the other week, didn't you? And he's a fantastic. He's a great writer. I do actually feature in his last book, which is the Champions Under Lockdown one, which he did. He asked me to do a little bit in that. But yeah, there's so much choice of Liverpool books that the market is almost, you know, to the point now where it's flooded. So maybe when I'm old and grey, I might consider writing a pinch of salt or something like that.
There you go. There's a good title. Yeah. We'll be glad to write an afterword or a foreword for you if you need.
Thanks very much.
Last question from our regular listeners. What are your views on the safety of fans being allowed back into the stadiums, and any idea when they may occur?
Well, I've got no idea when it may occur, because sadly thankfully I'm not a member of the UK government. But I think it's farcical that we're in a situation at the moment where there were cinemas not that far away from here. Certainly there was a couple over the water. I don't know about on this side, but over the water, there were cinemas screening the Merseyside derby. So you've got people going into a cinema to watch a football match that is deemed not safe for people to go and sit outside and watch, actually in the stadium. That completely wrecks my head. I don't understand how that works. So I think they could certainly have a socially distanced crowd back in Premier League stadiums without too much hassle. I think the transport is probably the biggest problem with it. How people get to the ground, and would they all be on buses or trains or whatever together? But even if you had a few thousand in Anfield, I don't really see. You'd be well apart, socially distant. I don't really see how that would be an issue. But for some reason, they don't want to give that image. They don't want to give that impression. So it won't be before Christmas, and I don't know when it will be after Christmas, to be fair.
You know, that kind of ties back into the VAR thing, where if they just had a standard process and it was followed every game at every location, then I think a lot of people would be more accepting of it, right? So we have the same situation here in Austin where they're playing college football games and there's fans there. The kids' leagues are all playing, but they have not allowed the men's league to resume. And so why is it good for one group of people and not for the other? And so I think it's kind of has the same situation over there and over here. Is like if there was a consistent message, right, put forth by the leaders, I think everybody would be able to come together and then work for it. Because I know there's a lot of division in Liverpool right now, you know, with the, you know, things closing as well. So.
Yeah, it's the lack of clarity that I think is the big bugbear of a lot of people, because in this country, non-league teams below a certain level can still have fans in. Mm-hmm. So there's still up to 600 in. But then when it gets to, I don't know whether you're how familiar you are with the non-league game, but National League North is, so Southport are in National League North. So they're not allowed any fans in. But you're at a level of football where that is virtually the primary source of income, their only source of income, really. So they've got to play games with absolutely no fans. So the government have had to give them some kind of money, because at that level, if you haven't got fans coming in, it isn't really worth playing. It's not. There's no, and even for League 2, League 1 clubs, it's really difficult. They're making a bit of money back from streaming the games. It's cheaper than £15, by the way. But there is, but you know, it's not the same. They're getting nowhere near the income they would normally be getting from season ticket or people coming back in the ground. So it's more of a problem at that level than it is the Premier League, because a lot of Premier League clubs, the actual gate money is a drop in the ocean compared to what they're making from the TV companies and that kind of thing.
Okay, last question from the guys. Mbappe, if you had unlimited transfer kitty, Mbappe or Haaland?
Mbappe, he blows hot and cold, doesn't he? You know, I was watching them the other night when they played United, and I didn't reckon much. I'll go Haaland.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, a lot cheaper as well, especially wage-wise.
Do you know what, though, on that point, I don't think Klopp would have someone like Mbappe anyway. I just don't think... It's a bit like saying, would you want Neymar? I don't think you go anywhere near Neymar. They sulk too much. You don't put you've got to work if you play for Klopp, haven't you?
But yeah, I just think it would unbalance the dressing room as well. You know, I mean, Mbappe is going to come in and, you know, the wage structure, then you're going to get other players, you know, going, I want some of that. It just, you know, Klopp's doing it right, you know, even though like everybody's like, oh, you know, now we've got the Nike deal, Nike with Mbappe, you know, put 2 and 2 together. But, you know, it's wishful thinking on some people's part, but I just think it wouldn't be a fit.
No, I don't think he would. I don't think he, as I say, I don't think he works hard enough. When you look at someone like Firmino, who his goal scoring record is not great at the moment, but you look at that's what he wants from a player, and that's why I was made up with Jota, because I like Jota. I would like Jota at Wolves. You know, 45 million is what it could rise to. That's a lot of money, but do you know what? In this day and age, Liverpool needed a player like that. The reliance on the front three. We've seen what's happened with Van Dijk in terms of over-relying on a player and then not having the backup. From what I've seen of Jota since he signed as well, he looks the perfect fit. He can play left, right. He can play central if he needs to. He's got experience of the Premier League already. His goal-scoring record with Wolves is pretty decent. So I was absolutely delighted when we got him.
And he's young as well, you know. And then get on to, you know, the 20 mil for Thiago is just a steal. I don't know how Michael Edwards does this. I just don't. He must have something on their families. That could well be the deal of the decade, couldn't it? Deal of the century, whatever you want to call it. Because, and again, I just hope he's not going to be in and out of the team with injuries. I mean, you know, we couldn't know what happened against Everton, but the 2 games he's played. I mean, the derby, that second half. Anyone who has got even the remotest interest in football must have been purring at that performance. It was just what he was doing with the ball. And, you know, the tightest of spaces, he gets out of them, and the no-look pass. He's almost taking the mickey with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's some player. The Chelsea match, you know, came on the second half, 45 minutes. It's probably one of the most beautiful, like, you know, performances I've seen in a while. He glides. He just glides, and he always wants the ball, which is really good. He's just like, give me the ball and I'll sort you out, you know. I mean, this team just looks brilliant. You know, obviously Virgil being out for the rest of the season, that's a big blow. But Fabinho doing fantastic. We just have to wrap all 3 of them in cotton wool, especially Matip.
Well, yeah, I mean, Matip is just. I think he is glass man, isn't he? I think he is always going to pick up so many injuries. I think it's worth mentioning Henderson as well, just because, I mean, certainly in that derby, I thought the way him and Thiago worked in midfield together, they just seemed to be on the same wavelength. And Henderson has improved so much the last few years as a captain, a leader, but also, you know, every ball is a positive ball. You know, I think he used to get criticised a lot on the Kop for too many sideways passes. He doesn't do that. I thought he was brilliant again against Sheffield United. Without him in that midfield, we are a lot poorer. And I tell you what, you see it when he doesn't play. Yeah. And he's just started picking up a few injuries. That's the only thing that concerns me about Henderson. We need to keep him fit, especially if you haven't got the leader at the back with Van Dijk. You need your captain on the field, don't you, more than ever?
Yeah, because I think if Hendo played against Villa, I don't think, you know, we might have lost, but it sure as hell wouldn't have been 7-2.
No, I know. Screaming at the telly, bring him on, but because he was on the bench, if you remember, for that game, clearly wasn't fit, which makes you wonder why he was on the bench in the first place. But anyway, you know, because Gomez needed to be hooked out of that game before he actually was, and even put Henderson on, and I think Fabinho could have been put back into the defence earlier on. You know, so there was various options there just to get someone with a bit of leadership on the field, because it was just the maddest game of football I've ever seen in my life, ever.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen 3 deflected goals ever go in like that. No. You just knew it wasn't our day. You know, it's just one. It's where at the end I just was laughing. I couldn't be pissed off. I just started laughing like, wow, this is just daft.
Yeah.
Let's hope there's no more like that, though. I mean, for other teams, but not for us.
Yeah, definitely.
But Steve?
No, man, this has been brilliant. I guess as we close up, what are your plans here the next few weeks as we lead into the holidays?
Well, I haven't really got any.
No, I mean professionally, you know, on the radio shows, are there like special things coming up?
Well, at the moment, I mean, we are just, the thing is, we're working in probably a bit like you guys, you know, doing a podcast at the moment in radio. You know, I do a daily radio show, so it's finding new angles to sort of talk about things. I mean, I do a lot of stuff, obviously, because I'm not just doing sport. I'm doing sort of news and current affairs. So you're talking about COVID-19 all the time, and it's actually really quite draining. It's draining, I'm sure, to listen to. So you're trying to find angles, new angles on stories, you know, different ways of treating stories, that kind of thing, just so it doesn't get monotonous and boring. So it's quite a challenge at times, actually. And the same with the football, because I think, you know, with the football as well, people might be listening a bit more because they're at home more. So you want to try and come up with different ways of treating those kind of stories as well. It's been great doing stories like the food bank story. You know, we've covered that. We covered obviously the Super League story. We covered the other story about the Premier League sort of having major structural changes. So the good thing about football on Merseyside is it's constantly evolving, it's constantly changing, and it's great to cover it. It really is.
Well, we do really appreciate you coming on, and you know, hopefully stay safe. You know, not much. You know, for good tidings at the moment. Hopefully, you know, in about 10 days, we'll know with the election over here. Have they said anything like how long the lockdown's going to be in Liverpool?
Well, it's reviewed after 28 days. So what are we, about a week and a half into it now? It all merges into one. So they'll review it after 28 days, but I can't see any sign that it won't be kind of renewed again, and we'll carry on being in the tier 3 lockdown. My wife works at the Royal, the hospital in town, and admissions are really high at the moment for COVID in the Liverpool City region. So it's not looking good. It's not looking great for Christmas, really, to be honest, which is obviously on a lot of people's minds. I'm sure if you've got family over here, I'll say hello to everyone in Formby for you. It's only up the road.
Hey, they're going to check your ID at the front. They don't just let anybody get in there.
But yeah, it's certainly it's really weird because there's a big north-south divide going on in this country at the moment as well. The fact that the London government is imposing restrictions on the cities, and the mayor of Manchester in particular has had a big spat with the government. Yeah. The problem is there's no end in sight, and I think if people knew there was an end date or something to aim for, it might be a little bit easier. Mm-hmm. But there's no end in sight. It's really hard at the moment.
Well, I mean, if there was a clearer message from the government as well, that might help.
Well, a lot of mixed messages, I'm afraid, and because we've now been put in these tiers, and we're in tier 3, which is the highest tier for restrictions. There's even been discrepancies between here and other areas in tier 3. So Lancashire, you could go to the gym.
Yeah.
Where in Liverpool, all the gyms were shut. Now they've now reversed that, and the gyms are open. But surely, if you're in the same tier, the rules should be the same. I just couldn't fathom that out. So you got people who were like driving from here to Ormskirk to go to the gym. It's just madness. Ormskirk is a small town just over the border in Lancashire for everyone's benefit there. But yeah, just really, really mixed messages and really confusing for a lot of people.
I know it was confusing to me that Liverpool got to tier 3, and then it took another week before Manchester got to tier 3, which is, 30 minutes down the road, right? So it didn't really make a lot of sense from my perspective looking that way. We have our own issues here, obviously, but, I always try to stay up to date on what's happening in Liverpool too. So
yeah. Manchester's infection rate wasn't quite as bad as high as Liverpool's, which is why they were later going in. Mm-hmm. But you've now got a situation where you've got Lancashire, Manchester and Liverpool all in tier 3, and there's a place called Warrington in the middle, which has been in tier 2, sandwiched by all these tier 3 places. They are now going up a tier. But it really, when this all started, it was actually quite clear because we were all in a lockdown, and the message was stay at home, and that worked really well. But since then, it's just been chaos because no one really knows. And then you've got people who are just getting so cheesed off, they're not complying with the rules anymore. It's really messy, really, really messy.
Yeah, it is. Hey, before we sign off, Paul, for our viewers and listeners that want to check out your radio show, can you tell us we can listen and at what time of the day that comes on?
It's BBC Radio Merseyside. And there's something called the BBC Sounds app. So if you search for BBC Sounds in the App Store, that gives you all the BBC stations in the country. It'll give you all the ones with loads of football on as well. It's actually a really good app to have. And then BBC Radio Merseyside is the station for Liverpool and surrounding area. So you find that, and I'm on from 2 till 6 in the afternoon, weekdays. But not this week because I forgot, actually, it's half term this week, so I'm off.
Oh, right.
But yeah, so that's how you can listen, or there's the BBC website as well.
Okay, do you live stream those shows as well, or
those shows live? Yeah, and you can also listen again for a month as well. So there's a catch up.
Daddy.
Okay, yeah. Somehow I got involved with Frank Carlisle's radio show. And,
God!
I've been on his. I've been on a show a couple times, and so it's like I don't know how that happened, but it's fun because I get to stay up to speed on what's happening in Liverpool. So when we have guests on, I'm kind of speaking from a place that I know versus just guessing. So it's been kind of fun.
Yeah, Frank. I've not seen Frank for years. Actually, Frank's big on history.
We're going to have him on the podcast one of these days to talk some Liverpool history for sure.
Oh, well, that podcast will be about 26 hours long then.
Yeah. he could talk for sure. That's...
Oh, he loves a guy. Definitely. I know. He's a good guy, though. He's a good guy.
Maybe we'll just keep Francine. We'll just keep his daughter on the show and let... Well, Paul, this has been great. It's been a pleasure, meeting you and getting to know you a little bit better. And hopefully that you can come back in the future and discuss some more topics with us.
Sure, yeah, no, I'd really like that. Well, thanks very much for inviting me on. Hopefully I haven't gone on too much. And it's
No. This is relatively early for me and Steve.
Yeah. Hey, we only said goodbye 5 times today.
Yeah.
Good luck editing it anyway.
Yeah, well, that's what the missus is for. You know, she does all the editing, so she does all the hard work. We just have, you know, the chat and the laughs. But hopefully, you know, when we're able to travel, we'll be over there, and I want to get, you know, all the guests that we've had from Liverpool down the pub, and, you know, get a nice chat going and a big old photo session.
That'd be great. Yeah, we'll go down Matthew Street like that. Go in a few of the pubs down there. That'd be great.
Oh yeah, defo. That's why I'm saving me liver for then.
Yeah, we had Paul Tremarco on from the Arkles, and he's been such a good friend to me personally, you know, in the last 5 years. And so, yeah, we're looking forward to come out there and just having pints with everybody that's been on our podcast. Oh,
fantastic! Yeah, I love the Arkle. I used to go in before I had kids and just had to rush straight to the game. I used to have a few pints in the Arkles.
Yeah,
good time, definitely.
Well, Paul, thank you again for coming on, man. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers, Paul. Have a good one.
Take care. Ta-ra.